Good morning, good morning, good morning. Well, it's not really morning. It's actually afternoon, but uh, I've been offline for a couple days. I think I did a little bit yesterday, but basically, here's where we're at. The shot is, or the scene, I should say, which consists of a bunch of shots, pretty much done. I think, I may come back to it later. Today in OpenTunes, I went into this sub-X sheet and did some really detailed fine-tuning to this action when Akari rolls over. Kind of sort of have to find it now. Let's turn the preview off. Yeah, that's the wrong shot. It's actually this one. So I didn't really like the way her nose wrinkled, and I felt like it should come back to the, she sort of goes like she's disturbed by something, and then I added a bunch of in-betweens on this rollover action. Now that looks pretty bad, most of it, but it doesn't matter because it goes by so fast that you don't really think about it. And this the shadowing and stuff is essentially fixed up by the post effects. Why it's not previewing right here, but that's OpenTunes. You never know. You never quite know what it's going to do. Okay, but the point today really is that I see what's going on. I inadvertently generated a preview. So if we go over to this screen, let me see here. Yeah, if we go over to this screen, you can see it looping around. So anyway, I think the main point today is that this is going to be edited in Sony Vegas, and here's why. It'd be great if we could do everything with open source software, but for me, it's not about that principle. It's about what does a better job. What's the best tool for the job? And by the way, I may have to quit at any time because we've got people coming over shortly. But anyway, when I jump into Vegas, the biggest thing is right off the top, it is really obvious that things are going to wind up getting retimed a lot. So, and if you know that's going to happen, then you want to have the flexibility to make that happen however it needs to. Well, and I'm not going to waste a lot of time teasing, and takes that short sequence and makes it a thing all of its own so that if I drag it out, it loops. And that allows me very easily to start retiming things. And I think that the lesson here is everything gets retimed, especially once we get this scored. We want to have the flexibility to do whatever we want with it. So I'm going to go ahead, and I'm hoping that this will actually play back in real time. I'm going to try to play back the whole scene. It's about 1 minute. So you get the vibe of what's going on here. So, we've got this shot. It's kind of slow because it's a really big image, but sets the stage, So these two shots were stretched out and looped so that I could dissolve between them instead of cutting, because I thought that gave the feel I was after. Okay. Now here you have another retiming situation. I wanted to hold that a skosh longer, and I wanted to loop that longer to show him struggling. Okay, the rock is in the first shot, so I can't really do anything with the start of that. But right here, I'm thinking I want to split this. Split, and just go forward 1 frame. Split. I'm going to make this a subclip so that I can just stretch this out. And it moves everything else downstream, and now we've got a moment. Okay, and I can make it as long as I want. After the rock sort of disappears from view, we can put a more appropriate pause in there, right? And that's going to be really important for. Now you could do this in OpenTunes, but it would be so clunky for a couple reasons. Reason number one is you would have to keep going into the sub-X sheets and making changes and then climbing back up out of them and then adjusting everything else accordingly, which would be a logistical nightmare. The other thing is, I got a couple situations here in the shot where obviously we're doing dissolves, and I think that through the schematic view, I'm sure that we could put in a mask and we could do a dissolve in OpenTunes. Yes, you can do it. Why would you want to? You wouldn't. It's just so much clunkier. So, you know, if you're going to edit video, you want to use a video editor. And my thinking is, since I've used Sony Vegas to edit 8 movies, you know, I kind of know my way around. So, and I think at this point we're sort of at the wrap up for this shot, and the next step is going to be really stepping back from the project. We've sort of proven out the workflow. I think if I had known at the beginning what I know now, I could have done the whole thing in probably a quarter of the time. So that's okay. It's been a good learning experience. Probably the takeaway would be that the focus for an anime is mostly on the drawings, not the animation. When you have animation, you want to do it on ones and twos and really do it, you know, kind of Disney style. Put all the keys in there you need to make it look perfect. But for the most part, that doesn't happen that often. Most of it is more about the individual poses and then making it graphically through the post-production and various kinds of details, making it look the way we want it to look. Because at the end of the day, I can see this is going to come up a lot, where we get the whole thing put together and we go, well, we want to retime that a little bit. Putting that pause in there before the happens is, you know, for me that's just mandatory. And I couldn't have known when I started that I was going to want to go from this to a dissolve instead of a cut. Okay, that's not true. I could have known, but I didn't know. Sometimes you just have to try things to find out what's working and what's not working. And I definitely felt like dissolving between these two was the way to go. And the thing is, we can change it anytime we want. If we wanted to lengthen this out, we could just go like that, and it does what's called ripple editing. So, and the other thing about it is, when it comes to, frankly, when it comes to post-production effects, Sony Vegas filters that are in OpenTunes have, you know, correlates in Sony Vegas, you know, in terms of layer or track blending modes and things like that. So masking, you know, blurs, filters, transitions, it's all there. So for me, I'm gonna definitely edit in Sony Vegas. And I think that going forward, as I said, what's the takeaway? It is that we're gonna think of the anime more like a movie, where we're gonna look at each cut or each shot as an individual thing, as if we had shot it with a camera, and just know in advance that I'm not good enough as an animator to map out the timing accurately at the pencil test stage. I can just see it's not going to happen. So for me, why be stupid? Why not focus on what I can do, which is I can come up with the shot. I can animate. I don't think the actual animation of the characters and all that's going to be a problem. It's more about just getting those shots. It's not essential that we put every one of them in their own folder as an image sequence and bring them in individually into Vegas. I don't think that's necessary, because you see here, we can work with them in clusters, you know, like we did here. I don't know how many shots there are in this scene, but I think there's probably about, you know, a dozen. How many levels do we have in OpenTunes? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Did I count right? 4, 8, 11. Yeah. So we've got 11, and it is nice in OpenTunes to be able to work with a bunch of shots as a group and not necessarily have to reload a different project for every single shot, because you do want that sense of continuity. So there's sort of the idea of a shot, and then there's the idea of a scene or a cluster of shots that there may be several clusters that comprise a full scene. And then, of course, there's the actual scene, which could go as long as 5 minutes, you know, in a real show. So for the most part, I would say what I've learned here is as a workflow, I think it's pretty close to what I want to be doing going forward. There's a few things in terms of working with, for example, raster levels and then tunes raster levels, doing cleanup and conversions. I'm probably going to be inking with vectors more, because when I went ahead and did it, which was this shot in particular, it worked out well. I mean, I have to admit, I didn't think it would, because I've been a little bit cynical about the sunglasses are so that I don't get sort of fry my eyeballs from looking at screens all day. But I will say that the tunes vector levels were a win, and so I can't really complain about that anymore. There's certain things I find I want to do, like I want to work with a fixed width line. I don't want to use pressure much when I'm using a tunes vector level, and then go in and use like the tire pump tool or whatever to set the thickness of those lines exactly where I want them. I didn't run into as many filling problems as I thought I would with the vector levels, so that was nice. And obviously you can exchange readily between tunes vector and tunes raster. So all in all, workflow, pretty satisfied. I think what's going to happen going forward is I'm going to do my pencil tests. I might use Blender, but honestly, at this point, I'm probably going to just use my paint brushes in OpenTunes and just keep it all there. I'm not really. Plus, since I started this, when I started, I was enamored with an infinite canvas, and that's kind of changed. I'm finding now that I actually like being hemmed in by the range of the camera, and my drawings, I'm sort of using the camera's, limits as to inform my drawing. And of course you can sketch outside the camera, it just doesn't draw any lines out of there. It does with vector levels, of course, and you can do that with like if you had a situation where you're going to pan the camera, well then just create a raster level and then change the size of it, make it twice as wide, twice as big, knowing that you're going to draw outside of the camera range, and then just do a pan move later. So it's really no big deal. The infinite canvas isn't as important as I thought. Using Blender is not as important as I thought. If I was going to try to break a character into pieces, let's say I draw a character in this pose, right? And then I decide, well, I'm going to animate his arm. In Blender, I might grab the arm and just bend it, right? And create a new keyframe. Well, essentially, you can do the same thing here by just cutting it and pasting it and possibly putting it in a separate level. And it's really fast to patch over it. Add another level and just patch up the gap. It's not like you wouldn't have to do that ultimately with Blender anyway, because when you export out of it, at that point you're limited by the Blender grease pencil as far as using it for ink lines. So for me, that actually proved to be a non-starter. In this project, the whole shot, everything you see here in Vegas, was originally a single sequence of lines coming out of Blender, and I don't know if I used any of them. They literally, every ink line wound up getting redone in OpenTunes. So why am I gonna, love the Blender grease pencil so much that I just have to do my ink there? I'm not seeing it. So anyway, so for the most part, I'm thinking I'm going to be just working in OpenTunes. And by the way, one thing here is I think I need an extra moonbeam shining that's really guiding the eye to this right here, so that when we transition, you can sort of tell that that's the window that we're focusing on. But that's just something I haven't gotten to yet. So yeah, I'm thinking tunes. I'm thinking raster level. You hit your G key. You hit the G key. I probably should just start here. Okay, so the arc tool is, sorry, gotta have a vector level. Boom. Okay. So this is what the arc tool does. But the cool thing about it in OpenTunes is you have the snapping. You can turn the snapping on up here. So that means you can go click, drag, curve, and get fairly exacting results. If you don't like the arc tool, you can use the polyline to ink in a very, you can do curves or you can do straight lines. You can get a closed shape, and then you can use the C key to fine tune it. If you don't like either one of those, you can just use a plain old brush, which has smoothing, so you can get a nice clean arc that way. Or you can just hit the shift key and get straight lines and get essentially the same effect as using the the polyline tool. So everything's there to do a good job with inking, with vector levels, and they sure are clean. I mean, you can't argue with how they look. They look really clean and sharp. So let's go back to our this project. Discard the changes there. We'll load it up. Hopefully I didn't destroy something in the process. But anyway, so I'm going to actually wrap up here because I got stuff going on. But I'll run this shot one more time. I think it's a little hard to see on the screen, but I think we're definitely on track. I'm looking forward to doing the soundtrack. Actually, this will be a lot nicer once I go ahead and do the soundtrack. And I don't think I'm going to do a bunch of live streaming about that unless people ask for it, which isn't going to happen. But once we've got some audio on this thing, then I'll post a video that's actually just the scene, just the clip, the 1 minute clip with all the audio and everything done. So yeah, I like the way I re-looped that. I think, see, this is another example of what I'm talking about. I think right here, this cuts to this too soon. So how do I fix that? Well, if I were to loop this clip in Vegas, it would go back to here. So that's no good. So what I got to do is go here, just go back one frame, split this, and make this single frame a subclip. And that allows me to just stretch that out roughly, I think, half a second or so. So let's see. Okay, so the only problem with that actually is I'm going to take that back out because I really need to have the looping of the his tassel. So now I'm going to go ahead and make that the subclip so that when I stretch it out a half a second, the tassel loop is baked into it, as you can see. So that's more what I was after. So the ability to retime it like that, it's totally essential. I have to be able to make those kinds of adjustments. I'm actually thinking that this, I don't know. I'm thinking that maybe I want that to be a skosh longer too. So I'm just gonna say, okay, let's make that a subclip. There's no cost involved with making these changes. If I delete the subclip out of the project, and then in Vegas, if I just clean the project media pool, then it just gets deleted out, and there's no waste. So let's just see how that feels. Yeah, it just feels, for lack of a better word, it feels more musical to me. There's sort of a tempo to this. Like right there's another good example. Based on this tempo that I'm talking about, that might be just a little too long. So I'm feeling this cuts. Yeah, right there. Okay. Right there. Too long. I mean, too short. I'm sorry. So I'm going to go forward one frame, zoom in, split that, create a subclip, and then stretch this frame out just so that after she wiggles her nose, I want to digest that for a moment more. Yeah, see, that's better. So, and my point is, you better believe this is going to come up over and over and over again. This idea of having to retime it to tune it up. So we might as well just plan that into our workflow. Wiggle, flip, cut, nice. Okay, right there, same thing. I think, and I could be wrong, but we can always change it. I'm going to say this shot right here, split that, go forward, split it again, make that a subclip. I just feel like I want to see his irritation a moment longer than I am. Yes. So it's like I'm retiming everything. which is fine with me. I don't care, man, as long as it looks good. Yep. Same thing here. Right there. Boom. It cuts away from him too quick. So, hopefully, folks, you're not too bored watching me do this, especially because I'm not in OpenTunes or any other open source software. Yes, that just feels better. Like I said, it's musical. It's actually got a beat to it. Hmm. 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 Eyeballs, the irises separately, and actually animate them separately. So, all right. I do not have YouTube open, so I have no idea if anyone's watching. I'm gonna go ahead and go there right now just to see. Live stream. Watching. Mute that. Oh, hey there. Hit film. Okay. Hey, Jay Parks. I'll make a note to check that out. Appreciate the tip. In fact, let's check it out right now. I've had bad luck with professional tools that are free. Like Fusion's good, but like DaVinci, it's like blows up more than OpenTunes. Hit film. I will definitely, thank you, sir. I will check that out. I will definitely check that out. It would be nice, and for you guys out there, just, take what I'm doing, and if Hit Film has a similar capability to be able to isolate a piece of a clip and maybe loop it and ripple edit so that when you drag something, everything else moves downstream, etc. If there's an analogous function in some open source or free software, use it by all means, and like Jay did right here, let me know what's out there, because I've been so able to do what I need to do with Vegas, which I've been using for at least 12 years. I mean, maybe 15. I've been using it a long time. So for me, I've just never had a reason to go to any other editing software. So I think what I'm going to do now, yeah, based on the time, I probably should wrap it up. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the beginning of Connected. Yeah, sorry about that. Stupid OBS Studio seems to be connecting and disconnecting a lot. So there we go, we're back on. So what was I trying to say? I want to speak a little bit to the path from here. Here's what, and you guys, share this with your friends that are into like anime or whatever, or animation. Here's what we plan to do. As far as the story, let me go ahead and run this, and I'll talk about it while it's playing. Okay. This animation has a story behind it that's pretty epic and pretty big. Think about shows like, The Last Airbender or something where it's mapped out over several years. There's a very big plan. The scripting of it is well underway. We're just bench testing the animation workflow at this point. I'm feeling pretty good about what I'm seeing. So we're really looking at YouTube as being instrumental. If we can release pieces of this show, once we've got some soundtrack and music behind it and all the rest, begin to do maybe 5-minute episodes or something in order to, I think it's the fact that you basically have essentially a 1 or 2 person team creating this anime, which is kind of unusual, combined with the fact that I think you'll find the stories really good, And if we can sort of build up an audience here on YouTube, maybe that can give us some traction to then go to, say, Netflix or somebody like that, and get the funding to mainly to outsource the animation, because we're ultimately we want to oversee the aesthetic. Yeah, it's really annoying how OBS. I'm not sure why OBS disconnects and reconnects. Dodoki-chan, thank you for the nice comment. Appreciate that. But so that's it for today, and I'm sure I'll be back on here in the next few days. So, okay, doke. See ya.